All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Egbert, and joined with me is Mr. Andy Full, the captain who's been taking over, who ran the show all last week. Thank you, sir, for taking over.
It's just the duty here as the co-host is to
The duty.
slide right in and not miss a beat. Well, the brainchild is gone. So that is just what we do.
Is it bad that I'm 24 and I still laugh at duty?
Yes, that is pretty good.
I can't help it. I don't know. Like if you got me in a meeting right now with a bunch of
is it a T on the duty or is it a D? So it's like duty, like poop.
It's like DOOTY.
Ooh,
maybe an
yes.
IE if you really want to get spicy.
Ooh, yes. It's like that homie dilemma, right? Is it a Y or IE?
Dude, that was I literally thought it was IE, or I thought it was HOMY my entire life till you guys were like, dude, why do you say MY? And I'm like, isn't that how it's spelled? And you're like, no, it's IE. And I'm like, oh, okay. No one ever told me otherwise.
I'd be for E except after C, bud. No, Y, IE, it's all interchangeable, I suppose, depending on who the person is. So, I mean, it's both grammatically correct, I think. I don't know.
I mean, I only ever say it over text, so it's like, usually don't worry about
I wonder
it.
I wonder how the pronunciation of home Y would be. Is it like home Y? Like, what's up?
Home Y.
Home Y.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, man.
Well, folks, we have
what's up?
We have a pretty laid back show tonight. It's been one Andy and I were talking about. Actually, we're supposed to have a guest on tonight. We'll save the surprise for when he's able to come on. He had to cancel, unfortunately, on us. That's going to be an interesting show. I think it'll dive into some really good topics. But with that being canceled, we tried to get a couple folks on last minute, but we didn't want to force anyone kind of in a conversation. And you guys know we don't like to try to force a show and put out any bad content. But we kind of are sitting there like, well, we want to do a show, but no one's around. And we're like, we know what? We haven't had you and I sit here and just kind of chat about a topic in a long time.
Yeah. This is going to feel good too to talk about bass right now because I've been steelhead fishing the last few days and I'm kind of missing my boat. Like I walked by my boat this morning at 5 o'clock when I walked outside and I was like, I miss you. as it's like snowing and hailing and downpouring. And I walked 8 miles today. I miss my boat and standing there and casting. Life's easier.
I bet you do. Especially when, you're definitely getting a damn workout. That's for dang sure.
Yeah.
When you're steelhead fishing versus bass fishing.
Yeah, the downside is you walk uphill both ways. So when you walk into the stream, I usually walk upstream. So I'm walking uphill. And then when I come out, I have to walk back uphill because to get down to the stream, I usually have to go down a ravine to get down. So I got to walk up a hill to get back to my truck. So it's like just never ends climbing uphill.
It's different though. It probably keeps you kind of mentally fresh, which I think is something we're gonna dive into today in multiple facets of when fishing gets tough, not just fishing tough on a lake and conditions, but fishing tough mentally. But it probably keeps you fresh, swapping that, taking a couple days off the boat, hitting the streams, and then when you get a couple days going in the streams, get back in the boat, kind of keeps you fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of cool walking the streams because, a little short story from today, we're walking up and we come around a bend, and Lord behold, there's these 2 massive bald eagles flying through the ravine 100 feet over our head, just screaming at 7 o'clock this morning. So that was pretty cool. It's the stuff like that I get to see when I'm out in the wild, and turkey vultures and buzzards chasing eagles around and deer and catching some really cool, strong, powerful fish and walking all that way for a couple bites. It's different, but it's definitely mentally refreshing. Just the fresh air. Yeah, catching some deer on the back cast. Oh, that'd be a fight. Let me tell you.
Who needs a bow and arrow when you got a fishing rod?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go. Let's see who wins.
Yeah.
Probably the deer. Probably
Yeah.
the deer.
I'd put my money on that. Well, folks, a couple quick things for you guys tonight. Obviously, we have a topic that we're going to be talking about. It's not going to be for the full time because we'd love to get some topics from you guys in the comments because obviously tonight is our live show on what we should talk about. But also, if you're listening to this afterwards, I mean, maybe this becomes a once a month. Andy and I just kind of dive into the topics you guys want us to talk about. So if afterwards, if you like the style of show, let us know. Hit us with some topics that you want to hear us talk about, and then maybe we'll kind of make this a once a month recurring thing. But it's kind of good to, as much as we love our guests, I think it is kind of nice to sit back and just talk fishing, you and I, because we haven't done this in a long time.
Yeah,
But
it's been a hot minute. Definitely a
for
hot
sure.
minute. So
With that being said, get some things out of the way really fast. Big thank you to everyone that has been supporting the new show on the Serious Angler Podcast Network, the Lure Lab. The Lure Lab so far is taking off well. We are loving to see the feedback that you guys have had. Definitely a few people have already messaged in saying they've used the techniques that we've talked about on the Lure Lab, and they've already caught fish off of them, or they learned something they didn't know. And that's exactly what we're going for and trying to help you guys learn about new techniques, get better with techniques you're already using. Because obviously, at the end of the day, the goal is to catch more bass. So if you have not already and you'd like to check out the Lure Lab podcast, it's on every platform that Serious Angler is on from an MP3 and a YouTube standpoint. If you want links to the social media and MP3/YouTube, it's all down below. It's on every show description, whether you're on MP3 or YouTube, so you guys can check that out. But thank you again to everybody that's checking out the Lure Lab. And if you do listen to it or you're watching, please subscribe on YouTube. And then if you're listening, please leave us a rating and review on Lure Lab. That'll help the show get noticed more, helps us more, and therefore means more content for you guys in the long run. So,
yeah.
Anything to add to that, Andy?
No,
Maybe
I just want to throw I see some awesome questions coming in already from all of our viewers here tonight, but this one is kind of cool. Like Chris Flay, what's the best way to catch those shallow fish feeding on super small bait fish? It's kind of cool because our last episode we launched on Saturday for the Lure Lab. We're talking about finesse swim baits. That's a really good way to catch those super small fish, and they come in 2 inches, 2 3/4 inches to mimic those bait fish really well. So interesting little segue back to it, but that is a great way. It's just to cover a lot of water, just a little ball head and a small swim bait, honestly.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because you said it's the best way to catch those small fish.
No, sorry.
No, you're good.
I've been up since 4:30 this morning, so my brain is fried.
Mush.
Yeah. But we're here, so that's all that matters.
Yeah. We'll start diving into some of these questions here in a second. But really quick, the last piece of business is something where we have very hectic schedules. My travel is yet to let up. Hopefully by Thanksgiving, there won't be any missed shows for several months. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. But you guys do enjoy Andy on his own, so we will not knock that. But it is nice to not have to miss shows literally at this rate 4 times a month.
Yeah.
So yeah. But one thing I'm trying to work on in the background is getting a crap ton of apparel lined up for you guys. Hopefully we're going to have that by Christmas. That is the goal, to have apparel set up, whether, we're going to try to start out with hoodies, shirts, and hats. If that's something you guys would be interested in, hit us up on social, hit us up in the comments. I mean, if you're on tonight and you want to get yourself a hat or a hoodie, we're going to start taking some names where we might have to start out with a pre-order because I'm still trying to find someone that makes quality apparel and will ship for us, because shipping is kind of a headache. But I'm willing to do it one more time if enough people want to get a hat or a hoodie before Christmas. So people are interested, let me know. We could probably put in a pre-order, and obviously make sure it's some good apparel. We can do Blackfish Gear sun hoodies. So if you're a guy that likes, or an angler that likes sunny hoodies, you want them Serious Angler branded, we can set that up. That'd be pretty cool too. But either way, just let us know. We got that coming. We're just going to try to figure it out and make sure it's the easiest option for you guys and for us, because trying to ship is a huge pain in the butt. So
yeah,
just figured we'd fill people in. But all right, Andy, we should probably let's start out with a couple of questions here quick.
There's so many good ones.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Let's
bypass
go
one
back.
fishing lakes with lower levels in the fall. I'm gonna bypass that one real fast, just because we don't get too much lake fluctuation here in New York. But there are a couple tips that we can go over. But hey, what's up, Clint? He's with Joe up there at Oneida filming right now, doing
I'm
some
definitely
Daiwa
not.
shoots. Yeah,
I'm not severely jealous at all.
I'm very jealous because I'm sure they are absolutely crank it on that lake. But let's start with Levi here, right? How to
Definitely.
effectively catch bigger fish when they start schooling with the smaller fish. And this is something that's kind of hard to figure out at first, in my opinion, because the small ones usually bite before the big ones. But if I'm wrong, Bailey, let me know. But usually what I'll do is just change colors first to see if you can get them to fire or upsize, like go one size bigger, or sometimes go one size smaller and you'll get the bigger bite. It's just really figuring out what the fish are telling you. And a big thing now is if you have live scope, you can really figure out how to trigger those bigger ones to get going. So just tinker around and have a ball doing it and catch a bunch of fish and figure out what works best for you and ride your confidence, man. Like that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
I will say, and this is going to go against Jim Johnson's comment saying no live scope, which is, I will say the easy answer to this is
Is
you can
live
use forward
scope.
facing sonar now to
Yeah.
see kind of where they're at staging and in terms of like where the big fish are holding on in that school. I mean, this question I feel like can go a few different ways because there's like, are we talking about catching bigger fish when they're eating smaller bait fish or like when they're schooling with smaller bass? I feel like the second one is kind of where he's trying to go at with the question. Great question here, Levi. Short answer is electronics is a great tool in trying to figure out how they're setting up compared to the smaller fish because there will be times. I feel like honestly, it's rare occasion when they set up the same in terms of you might have them sitting in a school, right? You might have this 10 by 10-foot rock pile that they're holding on, or just a hard bottom, and they're all on it. But you can kind of tell in like sometimes the bigger fish will hold on bottom where the smaller fish will hold a little bit higher, or vice versa. Or you can kind of see that there might be the main school of smaller fish here, but your bigger ones are a little bit off a little bit. Like you might see that on brush piles. Smaller fish might hold tighter, bigger ones might be a little bit, further put a few feet off of the brush pile. But to Andy's point, when you don't have electronics and they aren't being as straightforward as that situation, I feel like upsizing is like the first go to in terms of when you're catching a bunch of fish. It might honestly come down to though, just like you need to just go through a certain number. Like you need to catch 6-7 small fish to catch a 4-pounder. And you might need to catch, 4 or 5 more to catch a 5-pounder. You might need to cycle through those. I mean, how many times, Andy, on Erie is that the case where you go through? I mean, in your case, it's 24-pounders to catch a 6, and then you
Yeah.
do 15 more 4-pounders to catch 5.
It depends on the season. Like in the summertime, like let's go July. So post spawn, like severe post spawn through late summer pattern. If I'm catching a lot of small fish in an area, but I can see big ones around, a lot of times they'll live together. But the biggest thing to do there is not even change baits, but just to change the color in your bait. Like I will have 5 different drop shots on the rod on my deck, 5 different colors, and maybe like slightly vary the length of leader on my drop shot and try to figure out how to get those bigger ones to come out and eat. But when I'm on like a shallow flat situation where I'm just burning through numbers, if it's like a jerk bait or a crankbait situation, and I'm catching like 2 or 3 pounders, there I might switch, be like, okay, if I change a color, like if I'm using a translucent bait right now, maybe if I go to like something shiny, like a very bright, loud jerk bait or crankbait, I might be able to get one of those bigger ones to fire, or vice versa. If catching a lot on the shiny ones, go to more translucent natural to see if that's what the big ones bite. It's virtually just kind of figuring out what the fish wants on that any given day. And a lot of times, like Bailey said, that big one is just slightly off the school of them. So it's just learning how to target those individual fish that are the big ones. And that's my next point in the summertime. a lot of the times your biggest fish are all by themselves, and they are the absolute hardest ones to get to bite.
That's a really good point. Season is a really good demonstration of how
Yeah.
that comment could be, laid out in so many different ways. Also, like, are we talking deep? Are we talking shallow? Are we
Yeah.
talking in grass?
Yeah.
That is honestly, you know what, Levi? I wish we had stuff to give away tonight, because that is actually a good show topic. Let me write that down before I forget about that.
Yeah,
Levi, we're gonna break this into a whole show.
That's an incredible show topic. So thank you, Levi. Hey. Oh, I don't know. I might have something here if you want to give it away.
I mean, it's your stuff then. I mean, it's like,
no, these are the things that I borrowed from you and I haven't given them back yet.
You borrowed some from me?
The order sunglasses.
Oh.
So I have this pack. I mean, I have this pack of shades right here, some bluefin satin black with Sightmaster plus polarized. If you think that's something we can do for that.
Sure, why not? Let's let it rip.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already talking.
I forgot they were sitting here, so it's like, ooh, we don't have any fancy fishing shows. So, I mean, how's that sound? I kind of like
this.
Levi,
like, you are the one winner tonight for OBF shades.
I kind of like that. That's kind of fun. Like,
Levi's like, oh, dang, okay.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks, Levi, for the awesome show topic and the great conversation starter and allowing us to burn through like 8 minutes of rambling on about how to catch bigger fish. That's fun.
Yeah.
That
definitely needs to be that needs to be a bigger show, because like the more we talk about it, the more it's like, well, when you see this, you could do this. When you see that, you could do that. I think the short answer is being good with your electronics. You can kind of learn how to pinpoint those. Hey, and he's in a Hobie kayak.
Even better for the brand, I suppose.
All right, I want to go back to this really fast, because this was a great Lure Lab show we did last Saturday. But let's do two baits: super small bait fish, shallow. What are the two baits you're going to whip out? Let's do this: one smallmouth, one largemouth.
Oh, so the first one, it depends on the season, but the first one I will always try to get them to eat is like a little tiny Rico popper. Like, for some reason, like the little 2-inch popper on like 8-pound mono on a medium light bait caster, just covering water, especially if it's like bright, sunny, no waves, just calm, no boat wakes, or first thing in the morning. That's my favorite. And then a second one, if I had to choose between two, if I'm covering water, it'd be like a finesse style spinnerbait. So maybe like the War Eagle Get 5 finesse 3/16 ounce spinnerbait, or a single swim bait like 2.75 or 3.3, and try to match it like depending on what kind of bait fish is. If it's bluegill, going with like a darker colored swim bait, or if it's like little pin minnows that are super translucent, maybe like a rainbow shad or something along those lines, just to try to match the forage base.
I got you. So I will say for smallmouth, I'm just gonna throw a hair jig, and if the hair jig's too big, then I'm probably gonna get off the water. For largemouth, I'm gonna go down to a 2.8 on an Okashira head and just cover water. But there is one bait that is a show that I want to get lined up, and he's game for it. We just got to figure out a time. We're gonna be talking about. I think one bait that hits that is a float and fly. That's all we're gonna talk about right now, because there's some juice, and we're gonna wait for Caleb, and we're gonna schedule a show.
Ooh, I always forget about the float and fly. Always forget about that dang thing. I'm always like, I gotta try
about
this,
it after yeah, dude, he smoked my butt on that thing.
And have you used it since?
No, I can't figure out. I gotta get the right setup for it, because it's not one. It's literally one of those techniques you can't like. You can, people say you can get away with this rod and reel. It's one of those stuff you can't do that. Like,
got it. Fair enough.
So we're gonna have to schedule that show, because that is one that's juice, especially when it gets tough, as we're gonna talk about today. Let's see. Mr. Higgs is asking, with holiday shopping just around the corner, any new gear / baits to look out for to buy?
I don't know if
you've seen, Andy?
I honestly haven't been looking the last few weeks. There's always stuff that I want to try that I can't afford. So if you have like a spouse that's willing to spend money on you, have her buy like that
An
bait
Omnia fishing
casting
gift
reel
card.
that you don't want to buy. Yeah, or an Omnia fishing gift card, or allow her to use our code, which is what, Serious for 15 or Serious 10 to get
Here's
10%.
10 to get
Yeah,
first.
but no, literally, like this is a fun time to shop because you can make a list of everything that you wouldn't personally buy, and you can just send it out to your friends and family. Be like, hey, this is what I want for Christmas. Just let everyone know what you're buying me, so they know what
You don't, you don't
what
want to
not
buy
to buy.
Vision 110s? This is the time to ask for Vision 110s.
Yes, exactly. Or like if you want to buy like that Shimano Albertine casting reel, like this is that time to do it. Like ask somebody to buy it for you so you don't have to buy it yourself.
Honestly, this is the time of year that I look at like my tackle storage. What needs revamping? What do I need next year? Like this is
Great.
the time where I go buy all that jazz. Like if I'm a co-angler, I'm looking at like, I mean, in the spirit of like we are talking about asking stuff for Christmas or something like that, right? Where your pops or your mom asks you, hey, what do you want for Christmas? And you say you're a co-angler and you've been using a raggedy old backpack to carry your gear. Ask for a Plano backpack or something like that. For that. They came out with that new one last year. That's pretty freaking sweet, and it makes a good co-angler bag. Or even if you go out fishing with like me, where I have a lot of friends that have boats, and I go out in their boats, that's a great bag to bring along, whether you're fishing tournament or not. It's kind of stuff like that. It's kind of like the oddball time of year where it's like I'm not buying the bulk of my baits right now. It's kind of where I'm buying that stuff that I'm too busy buying other stuff throughout like the spring and summer and fall. But it's kind of a cool question. But either way, if you do decide to get some fishing tackle, head over to our friends over at Omnia Fishing. Use code Series 10 for 10% off. All the codes are down below. Again, all discount codes, not even just for Omnia, but for all of our amazing, amazing show partners that are down below in the description on both MP3 and YouTube. Let's see. We got.
What about David Zhang's question? That's a good one. I never use a split shot rig like ever. Probably something I should do. So what it is, Bailey, it's like a split shot, and then you have like an octopus, like a French fry on the back of it. Old Zoom French fry. Just something I never have thought about doing up here in New York.
It's like a not even really low budget. Low budget's not the right term, but like a low budget Carolina rig, I guess, in terms.
Yeah, but you're using it on spinning gear. Yeah.
Ooh, I want to keep going down the line because we might not get to this whole tough quote unquote fishing for a while because these questions are good. Let's see. You got 3 crankbaits to use for the rest of the fall. What are you using? I feel like I can guess your first one.
Go.
OSP.
Yes. Yes. So there's 3, right? Like you have the OSP EXDR, you got the OSP DR, which I've really come to like this year, and then a Strike King 5XD. Like when I am crankbait fishing in the fall, I want to cover as much water in a very tight, specific area as possible. And I reel that thing until my arm falls off. So, like, for instance, if you watched the Lake Fork Bassmaster Live and Brian knew burning a 10XD and a 6XD, I'm not reeling it quite that fast, but I'm up there with like a 7-1, 8-1 gear ratio reel and 10-pound test. And just, oh, yeah, just I want it in that bottom. It's fun.
Whew.
Yeah. Just covering water because I want them to react and eat it. And I want something that's slim, but has a little bit of roundness to it. So it has a good wobble to it. But I want a slim bodied crankbait like a 5XD because it cuts water a lot easier than something that's round. And it's not going to blow out. It's going to run more straight and true. Some other ones for good choices would be like a Bomber Fat Free Shad, like a little bit more old school. And then a Norman NXS is another good one if you like Norman crankbaits that dive. So like the Normans are weird. They have more of like a tapered out, long swimming belly to them that get down. But the NXS is like a 5XC. It goes straight down upon reeling, so you can get to the bottom depth extremely quick that you're trying to achieve.
I don't honestly crank all that much in the fall unless we're going for smallmouth, and that
Can I guess your 3?
Sure.
So it's going to be a rock crawler, an OSP EXDR because I got you in love with that thing.
Yeah, I don't
And
even know the model
then,
yet. Just send me the link, and I just went and bought them.
yeah. And then, I want to say it's that Berkeley one. I can't think of the name of it. But no. What is it? What's the third one?
I'm
5XD?
going.
You
It would
love
be
the
up there.
5XD.
I've thrown a 5 and a 6 XD for so long, but that's more of a summer crank for me. Which one we won't get into right now because I don't want to give up that juice yet.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm going
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
school. Just Lucky Craft Square Bill.
1.5 is so good. So good. See
Especially as
now,
that grass is starting to die off and it comes off the trebles really easy and you're just burning that along the grass lines.
yeah. So
It's
now,
a fun inside grass line bait this time of year. I'll say
if
that.
if this question was open to all seasons, it would be much more difficult, right? Like it'd
Yeah.
probably be like a Lucky Craft 1.5 because it comes out of grass easily. It's great in the spring. It's great in the fall. I might have to include a Fritz side in there just because of that slender body. And then always an OSP, like whatever brand OSP, they're just incredible. Every one of them,
Yeah.
they're just so hard to get your hands
And
on.
look. Okay, we need to put an asterisk on this. So there's somebody out there, there's probably multiple out there that are like me back before I used an OSP or I've seen how an OSP works. And they're like, yeah, crankbait's a crankbait. Like, I don't need to go spend that much money on a JDM crankbait when I can go throw this rock crawler and it'll work just fine. That was me. Went out fishing with Andy, caught one. Andy caught one. Then Andy caught 10 to my none. And then I finally put on one, and we just went back to back to back to back casts. Put the
That
rock
was
crawler back
silly.
on, stopped catching them, said, screw this, going back to the OSP. So it actually works.
It was that those
Crankbait is not a crankbait. They're not all made equal, that is for sure.
those 10 hours of fishing we spent in 2 days. One night was like an hour and 10 minutes, and the next day was like a solid 8-9 hours. Was just absolutely insanity.
How
Like,
many times did I get hung up and catch a bass with a crankbait? Like, I was sitting there popping
your
off.
A-rig,
We're
you
getting
got
pissed.
hung up with an A-rig and doubled. Like snagged down the bottom, and you're like, "Oh, I got one." And then you're like, "Oh, I got two."
I gotta find that clip. We'll have to post it again. It'll make actually
Yeah.
a really good TikTok or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, literally, I got my A-rig stuck, and I'm sitting there with Andy. Like, we're literally about to leave, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, hold on, I gotta go get this unhung. And I'm doing the typical like, don't even care, just screw this. I'll break it off. If I have to. And I pop it one time, and the rod bends back the other way, and I'm like, oh god. Like I start reeling. I'm like, I got one. I got two.
Yeah, it was dumb.
Yeah.
Stuff
But they-
happens in the fall. And that week is coming up really soon. And statistically, like that week is always calm in November. So I hope we can do that again. At least one day.
It would be nice. I hope I don't miss it when I'm in Louisiana.
Ooh, when do you go to Louisiana?
I leave November 3rd, come back the 14th.
Ooh, yeah, you're probably gonna miss it.
Yeah.
It's like the 7th through like the 15th ish. Sometimes a little before, sometimes a little after.
Lucky me.
Sometimes a couple years it's been the week of Thanksgiving. So
Hopefully it's that. That'd be fun to fish on Thanksgiving.
fishing in cold, dirty water on a tidal fishery after significant rain.
Find current.
Find current and pick up a blackened chartreuse, square bill, or what's the name of a Lure Jensen old school speed trap? Like that thing in cold water, you can crawl it and that thing still wobbles. Incredible.
If it's cold, pick up the biggest Colorado blade that you can find.
Yeah, and just slowly thump that thing. But if you go back to Grand Lake, when Aaron Martins finished second or third, I think it was, he was fishing an old blackened chartreuse, Lure Jensen speed trap in the dirty water down by the dam, which was like the coldest water on Grand Lake. And he was catching them, I think, in like 38, 39 degree muddy water, which you shouldn't be able to catch a bass in. That is against all the books. So, yeah, it catches fish in really cold water.
Yeah. That is obviously like the toughest conditions. So like, don't expect you're gonna go blast them, but be efficient with the areas you run. Find moving water, and then obviously, like if it's cold, dirty, see if it's possible. See if there's any tribs or any creeks that are flowing in that are pumping out cleaner water.
Yeah.
'Cause if you can find that, and you might have to just pick up like a black and blue jig, and find where that water's pumping into and just work that sucker as slow as you possibly can. Like count rocks.
Crawl.
Yeah. It's not going to be fun, but you'll probably pick up a few fish. Jim Johnson says scents or powder or liquid.
Is this a Taku question for the St. Lawrence, Lake Ontario, when he was like, I got my white powder for smallmouths?
I still have our buddy Andrew Hayes at Tackle Talk. I have his episode queued up for Taku. I'm supposed to listen to it tomorrow. I don't know about the powder stuff. I will say the only thing that I believe in right now, because I've seen it work and it's coming from scientists, is water-based is like the only thing that actually like fish are capable of quote unquote smelling and absorbing. Because like oil-based, they can't. It's a slick that'll just completely leave the bait.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm gonna have to go liquid, but I mean it's working for Taku, so I can't knock that.
Yeah, there's got to be some type of like oil or something that powder creates when it hits water. That's the only thing I can think of. Very interesting.
That needs to be a show though. Sense. But here's David Jung, our buddy from English Channel, said, being Northerners, we can't pick our weather this time of year. If you hit a lake during turnover, do you just pack it up and go home / to a different lake? And Andy, this is almost like David knew that I had a really bad weekend for this exact reason.
Yeah, Bailey packed it up and went home. No, the turnover is extremely, extremely tough to fish, as we all know. But if you can catch one during the turnover, a lot of times it clues you into what's going on. The biggest thing I found during a turnover is to get as humanly shallow as possible. If it's calm, if it's wavy, not all you can really do if it's real windy is pick up a spinnerbait and just burn water and hope you can catch a couple. But it's get as shallow as possible and to really slow down and really pick stuff apart. Because those fish don't want to move. The lake is doing all kinds of funky things, but they have to eat. So as soon as you can get one bite or clue, it can usually turn you on to what you need to do. You just have to be really paying attention to the specifics of that bite.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was hit with this past weekend. Went out with one of my buddies, and I caught like a maybe 1 pounder, if maybe legal keeper at all. Like really fast. It was set up the way I thought it was going to be set up, and I was like, water temps are 53. I was like, hey, this might be pretty good. We're not even to the good stuff yet. We get to the good stuff, it's completely deserted. We don't catch anything for 3.5 hours. My buddy pulls out a mag draft, catches a 5 pounder like on his third cast. We run that pattern for another hour, nothing. We've stayed out deep, like real deep. I got the whole lake graph, so that's not like there's any spots that are going unhidden. Went dirt shallow, as you mentioned, like literally on the bank, and it was a layer of leaves everywhere with turned into a 15, 20 mile an hour south wind, and this lake runs north to south. So there really wasn't a great place to get out of it to fish shallow. So I decided to just go experiment with my new motor on my kayak and said bye. There's something. I'm not a quitter. Like, me mentally, I can't. I refuse to quit. This is one of those times where I'm like, yep, screw this guy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, but you could still, there's always something to learn. So if you look back, you learned what not to do. So you learned something.
Yeah, I honestly, looking back on it, I don't know what I would do because all the grass is dying off. Tried flipping it, threw a chatterbait over it, fish deep. My fish were not on my deep stuff.
Was there a thermocline?
No.
Interesting.
None. Yeah, it was very weird.
Did you find bait fish anywhere?
There were a lot of bait fish. There was schools of perch everywhere, schools of alewives. There were a couple of fish by them. They'd follow your bait, and then they were gone. Like it's almost like they knew that forward facing was on them, but like they left completely. Not like they leave out of the cone, they leave completely. They're gone.
Huh.
And then we come
Interesting.
back to them and like start way off of them, and they just weren't there. It was super weird.
Yeah, they're just being wonky. It doesn't help that there was 2 tournaments there the day before.
Well, yeah, we talked to another guy that was at the ramp too, and he said he didn't catch anything.
Yeah.
And he's a dude that's pretty good around here. And if he struggled, I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit better about myself.
Yeah, which means it's probably on fire right now with all these crazy fronts coming through.
Yeah, now's the time I want to be out. That's for sure.
Yeah, but still blowing 40 out of the south every day, and it was snowing this morning.
Yeah. Well,
So,
to answer this question, once you finally have that turnover, like fall is here. Like in terms of that fall bite, it'll be consistent, and then it's just going to get colder and colder. So every time you see a big drop in temperature and pressure, you better be on the freaking lake because they're going to smash them.
Yep. Until the water gets to about 45, then it gets really tough.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got. Do you ever randomly cast anymore, or do you wait until you see fish on your sonar?
I 100% randomly cast because those are the casts that you always catch one with dumb luck, and it's usually your biggest one. So, like, especially on Erie, I have so many waypoints on Lake Erie when I'm out fishing. I'll put myself in an area, and I'm like, I know there's boulders like 150 feet that way. There's a gravel patch 110 feet to my left, but I'm looking right at a boulder with 2 fish, but they won't eat. Sometimes before I pan over to them, I will cast in that direction to see if I can get them to bite. And then if they do bite, then I don't care. I'll use my forward facing to see how many more are there. But if they don't bite, I'll still pan over and be like, oh, they're not there. And I'll just randomly cast the other way and then slowly pan to it. So, like, depends. Largemouth fishing, I'm always randomly casting because I haven't quite figured it out with largemouth yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say when I'm going shallow, I mean, I might have it on in certain cases, especially like if water's dirtier and I want to see like where the isolated grass clumps are. But I mean, for the most part, when I'm shallow, I'm trying to get away from it. But when I'm not deep, I'll be entirely honest. There's a couple of different cases where like if I'm working up to a spot that I'll try to make as long casts as I can to like get that before you start getting into that forward facing, like if the fish start getting in that cone. But beyond that, like I make 1 or 2 casts doing that, and then I'm not usually making a cast for like deep water smallmouth until I see him on forward facing. It's just an efficiency tool, like especially in a tournament. I mean, we're not at that stage yet where they're just magically rising off the bottom. Like when those temperatures get really cold, you'll start seeing that where you can start looking at them on 2D or seeing them on side, and then just kind of, hovering a bait above them and watching them rise up magically off the bottom. But beyond that, I mean, it's all efficiency right now. It just depends. Shallow for sure. Shallow, I'm usually trying to put sonar away. Let's see.
I agree.
If you are catching fish on a certain color bait, when would you change color for a bigger bite?
A lot of times I will change color after I burn the school to the ground to try and get a secondary bite going. And that's usually 2 things will happen. One, you'll catch a giant, which is a really big fish for that school that you're catching. Or you'll catch even smaller fish and get them refired up and then go back to the color you were using and they start eating it again. So, I mean, it all depends on the day and the fishery and what you're fishing for, honestly, because a lot of times a bigger bite will come on the same color that you're using. It's in a very slightly different area than where you're getting most of your bites. It's in the general vicinity, but it's on something slightly different. And I think we focus on color too much when it comes to getting bigger bites, as opposed to figuring out where the bigger fish live. Because in my opinion, you only need 3 colors for soft plastics: black and blue, and green pumpkin. So like color isn't that much of a difference. The only time color really matters to me is a jerk bait, a spinner bait, chatterbait, or a crankbait. Anything that's power fishing and moving. Because there's been days where you'll only catch small ones on green pumpkin, but as soon as you go to white on a chatterbait, you'll get giant bites, or vice versa, or same with the spinnerbait. You might catch a lot of fish on a white one, but as soon as you go to a brown colored spinnerbait, you catch big ones. So that's the only time it really matters, is basing it off the forage base. Flipping, it's mostly reactionary. I don't think you're catching fish. Flipping a bait in more of a feeding response, I think you're getting it near them and they're reacting to it and eating it in that moment of time. As to where with like a moving bait, a lot of times those fish are actively feeding. Unless it's a crankbait, then they're bumping it. Sometimes you'll get them outside the face.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a bigger bite, I guess this is a hard question because I don't really.
Oops, sorry. That was me. I was trying to silence my watch and I hit find my phone.
Everyone's going to be looking at their phones now as they're driving, listening to this.
My bad.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I'm like again, you just said, I'm so simple when it comes to colors. Like, I have to keep it as very simple as I can. That even applies for crankbaits. Like, I have two shad up. You're making me yawn.
Sorry.
2 shad patterns and a gill pattern. And then I have like one dirty watercolor, like a chartreuse that Andy's mentioned earlier in the show. So like, I don't really change colors, especially, I don't know. I mean, it's, for me, it is all placement, area, what piece of cover you're fishing. And then the biggest thing I choose for color is forage and contrast to the water. And that's the only 2 factors that I apply. I just try to keep it as simple as you can, because typically if you find fish, you figure out a way to make them eat a black or blue or a green pumpkin or a white.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy. Like, a lot of people shy away from black and blue in clear water. Sometimes I will only throw black and blue when the water's gin clear. Because
bluegills,
yeah, they will eat the fire out of black and blue. Like, if I can find them, my favorite color chatterbait is black with a green pumpkin trailer, and I dye the tail chartreuse. Like, there's some juice for everyone. If you can find black chatterbaits, get a green pumpkin Zacco or some type of swim bait and dye the tail chartreuse. If you're in a grass fishery that's ultra clear, a lot of times on bluegill will be black with a faint tail of chartreuse on them. And my gosh, you will get giant bites on that. And that's for people listening to this. I don't like to talk about that much, but I figured since we're talking about how to catch bigger bass, that is one way to do it right there. Yeah.
Here's a good question. So Levi, we haven't asked this, but I think I have a better answer to this question. Being someone that loves to find and target structure with a sonar in the Ozarks, would Mega 360 or Live Scope be more effective? And you had a follow-up comment that says, because our lakes are very deep, so that's why I lean more towards Live Scope than Mega 360. I will say, someone that likes to specifically fish like and target like pieces of cover, if you are brand new to that body of water, I'm going to go 360 because I don't know what's there yet. If I have time to graph and check places out with my side imaging and down imaging, and I go back to go fish that, I'm going Live Scope, if that makes sense. Whereas if I'm going and I'm fishing a brand new area and I'm not just going and graphing it, 360 is going to tell me much more than if I'm going in there fresh with and trying to fish with Live Scope, because Live Scope, you're obviously automatically panning, but 360 is going to give you a better lay of the land of what exactly you're fishing, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers that question. And 360, you can fish really deep stuff and still use 360. So, Andy, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I'm not an avid user of 360, but personally, if I was just starting out fishing on Lake Erie and I graphed an area, but I didn't know exactly how it's set up because I'm out there all the time, I would personally choose 360 over Live Scope. Live Scope, to me, is more of a tool to figure out how to get the fish to react and get them to bite. 360 is going to help you find and locate structure when you're spot locked or sitting in an area. as to our live scope will tell you the immediate reaction and mood of the fish. And then you can base your technique and presentation off of that. It's much easier to find structure and cover water with 360 than live scope, personally, because you're constantly panning back and forth. And a lot of times it doesn't read fast enough and if you pan too quick, you'll just miss everything. So especially if you're looking for like real skinny, like Lake Hartwell in our last episode with Bryant, right? We were talking about cane poles. If you scan that with live scope and you pan too fast, you will never see it. But if you know what you're looking for on down imaging and side imaging as you drive by it, you know how to mark it and fish it then. So it's they're all tools, and you just have to figure out which one's best for you and your situation. But at the beginning of the day, if I was starting out, I would have 360 for fishing deep, specifically looking to target structure with sonar.
So we have a comment here from Born to Fish. So I don't know if this is off topic, but when using 360, do you subtract depth of water for target distance?
That'd be a Bailey question.
I've never even heard of that, to be honest. He said, example, 20 foot of water, stump at 60. Is it 40 feet out or still 60? Okay, so if you're sitting still and you see a stump at 60, it's at 60. I've never heard that it's 40 feet out if it's 60. If it's telling you 60, typically your graphs are correct. If that makes sense. I don't think that you subtract versus depth of water.
I think Brandon Polinick posted a video on this, and I think it's based on range or some certain setting that it has, but I think automatic setting, I would assume it'd be at 60.
Yeah, you should be able to trust your graphs. Like it's like same thing with side imaging. If you are graphing along, you see something at 60, it's going to be at 60.
Yeah.
I was just trusting your graphs. I mean, for me, like when I see something at 40, I'm trying to cast 50, 60 past, like at 50, 60. So it's casting past it and bringing along to it. Because typically, and I've learned this with forward facing, is that most cases when you cast and you go right on top of a fish, you're not going to catch them, versus if you cast 10 or 20 past them and bring it by them, it's more natural. They're kind of getting skeptical when something's just dropping right on their head. Now, smallmouth and Great Lakes typically doesn't matter. You can drop something right on their head and they'll be fine. But in other cases, it's better just to cast past it. So, but yeah, I would just trust your 360. It's going to tell you exactly how far out it is. We got Donald back from Scotland. He's back on another show, and he's got look at that dang. Is it a Harley?
Sweet chopper.
Got a Harley in his spot. Yeah.
Got a sweet chopper in the bio photo.
Nice ride. Oh, that's pretty good. All right, so dude, it's almost 15 minutes into this. We still haven't talked about our topic
for today. Oh, just real fast with Levi Schneider. Perspective mode I found is only really good in like 20 foot or less, maybe even 15. I tried it for a minute and I went back to the normal mode because I was like, I got to really fine tune this and figure it out. It was great in like 8 to 10 foot. Anything past that, image got all distorted for me and I didn't like it past there. Perspective mode, you can't see your bait either in perspective mode. I don't think throwing a jerkbait on perspective mode is good unless you're looking for target. But you can't even really see the fish half the time. It's just structure based, in my opinion, unless they're really big.
Oh, in terms of perspective mode, if you can see fish,
you can see them, but you have to really get it dialed. Like really get it dialed.
I'd say when it's dialed, perspective mode. Well, so for folks listening, like I use Mega Live, it's landscape. Perspective mode on Garmin is you're good. Perspective mode on Garmin is like your quote unquote, what is it, 120 degrees of basically like a live 360 of it, if that makes any sense. If you get that thing down, I mean, obviously super deep water, past 15 becomes a little bit more challenging, especially you'll be able to see structure if you want to have like a little bit more pinpoint casts on stuff. But I mean, when you get that deep, using forward forward mode is the way to go. But there are times where, like, if I'm fishing a very specific piece of cover, shallow, like less than 15 foot of water, I put that thing on landscape for Mega Live, and I can see those fish swimming around that piece of structure, and it becomes it's kind of interesting because there's times where on forward you're looking at a piece of cover and it's hard, those fish will hold so tight that you can't see them, but on that landscape slash perspective mode you can actually see them on it, you can see them swimming through it, whereas you might be blocked by that that forward mode. It can
Makes
help you
sense.
make specific pitches to these fish. I've done it, I got some video of it, and I got it coming up on a future video on Be the Fish, but uh, that mode definitely has its place, especially I think if if you're fishing grass. I'll say that if you want to make sure you're covering as much water as you can, and that's why you're seeing guys running 2 forward-facing sonar transducers now, so they can run that perspective and that forward, if that makes sense. But definitely worth. I mean, dude, if you're rethinking it, I mean, I think universally, it's such a hard question, but I mean, 360, you can see fish on that as well. Just really, it just
Yeah.
boils down to how you fish. Like if you're a guy that likes to run and gun, I'd probably lean more with forward facing because you can get that perspective mode. Especially if you're a jerkbait guy, like you fish up in the column. I feel like that's forward's gonna be the way to go. But all right, Andy. So we wanted to talk. We guess we don't have to talk about it for too long, but like we wanted to talk about when fishing gets tough in terms of one, conditions, how to refine fish, but then two, like when fishing is tough in terms of you're in a rut, like you're mentally not firing on all cylinders. How do you get back on track? And I think it'd be good to just kind of focus on the mental one for today's show of like, dude, I'm in a slump. I'm not fishing the way I want to, and how to get back on track. And to lead this conversation off, I think a lot of people that find themselves in this slump are trying to force something. They're forcing a variable too hard. Like they're trying to fish a certain way when conditions might be telling them the opposite, if that makes sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of times too, like when you get into a slump, you're outside of your comfort or your confidence zone. So like your confidence might be flipping grass, but you find yourself like burning through it with a chatterbait, even though you're a terrible chatterbait or a spinnerbait fisherman. Like the first thing I would do is sit down, grab a sandwich, go to your graph, and figure out where on your graph, if like let's hypothetically speaking, let's say it's gassing like 40 miles an hour onto an area that you found those fish in practice, or in the morning of the tournament and they stop biting. Like sit down, grab your sandwich, look at your graph, and go find that next place that looks very similar on the contour lines, and maybe it's out of the wind so you can get back to your confidence and just go fish. Like slow down and go catch one. And as cliche and simple as it sounds, it literally works. Even if it's a 10-incher, that can help clue you into like, okay, I know there's fish in the area. Maybe it's a bait change. Like I'm flipping this double wide 5-inch beaver. Maybe I need to go down to 3 3/4 and a 1/4 ounce weight. There could be a slight variable off that you're missing, but keep it in that relative zone of your confidence. If you love flipping grass, just start messing around with baits that you can flip grass with until you can figure out how to get them to bite. Because there's always a grass bite. It's just so much of it is timing and having the perfect conditions for it to happen.
Yeah, just going back to basics. Like there's a bunch of guys I feel like that definitely get caught up looking at electronics or trying to force one thing or the other. When I mean, obviously this is regionally and lake dependent, but just picking up a stick bait or a top water or a frog or a jig, something really simple,
Yep.
and just go fish shallow. Go fish something that makes sense. Go find docks. Go fresh the mind. Click reset. Whereas getting offshore can be a little bit draining because you might start cycling through baits. You might start seeing fish. If you're not up to speed on or have enough time in with electronics, you might be thinking, carp and walleye or bass, and you start chasing ghosts, which they literally are ghosts because there's chasing ghosts where it's just like you're chasing the one giant, but then there's chasing ghosts of like you're just straight up lost. That's the time where I think you need to pack up everything, put the electronics away, and just go start bank beating, because that's probably where most people's roots stem from, and that will help you kind of get back on track of where to find them. And if you're not catching them, I mean, the great place to start is the bank, because they got nowhere to go if you're fishing the bank besides deeper. So you can start reset that process of trying to go back and find them again. But I totally agree with Andy. It's like, go sit down for a little bit. Like you might be spinning the wheels too much in terms of trying to forcefully think about what they might be doing and making it too complicated on yourself. Whereas when you sit down and you do whichever, it'll kind of give you a reminder of, one, look up, right? Now, don't look down at your electronics, look up. Like, hey, is the sun out? What is the wind speed? Where's the wind coming from? What are my water temperatures? What time of year is it? Like, I feel like it's good to, one thing I actually have it in my phone that when I start spinning, I pull it out, is I have a checklist. It's kind of like in terms of like, when pilots get on a plane, they have a checklist they have to go through. I have like my condition checklist that literally just has, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that, giving me reminders. And I start looking around and kind of can help me somewhat get back on track and get, my coordinates of what the heck I need to be doing. But that might be, I don't know, something where it's like you start spinning, pull out the notebook or something and look at that and be like, okay, I'm going to at least go back and just restart. What are the conditions telling me? And that might help you lead into what the fish are doing. And then they can give you clues and you can go from there.
Yeah. And those are great points. And like, I can go one step further. Like if you're fishing shallow and you're struggling, run as many main lake point docks as you can. Like there's 4 or 5 of them. One of them is probably going to have a fish on it every time you pull up to one. And then pay attention to what dock it is, what type of dock it is, what kind of grass is around it. And then you can run that pattern every time you run onto a point. Is it on the wind side? Is it the windward side? Is it getting blasted? Is it gravel? Is it rock? Is it grass? Is it mud? Like, and just really pay attention to the minute details. And then you can run it the rest of the lake. And that's one of the biggest things, is really paying attention. Another thing, like mentally, like one thing that I think I do really well at is like if I'm fishing a moving bait, like a chatterbait, and I'm getting bit, but they're not getting it, like that's cluing me in that I have to slow down. Right. So I'm like, okay, I really need to flip this grass. I got to figure out what they're going to do. So I'll start rotating, flipping grass in different baits in an area, but it's also vice versa. If I'm flipping grass and I'm not getting bit and all of a sudden I burn it out to the boat and one comes up and smokes it right next to the boat as I'm burning it out, now my light bulb goes off like, okay, they're chasing. I need to pick up something that is moving and go on that term. So it's really paying attention to what the fish are telling you. They're always telling you what's going on. Just a lot of times, and I'm very bad at this too, is being too stubborn and trying to force something until it's too late, because we have this mindset of fishing our confidence, which we're like, we're going to catch them doing this because that's how I like to catch them. But a lot of times we have confidence in other things. We're just afraid to move to it because we have this preconceived notion that we want to catch them this way. And 99% of the time, we don't catch them the way we want to. Just honestly, unless it's the fall or spring, then you can catch them however the heck you want.
Yeah,
agreed. Yeah,
that's a really good point. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, and excuse me,
knock it off.
I know we're about to sign off right here, so it's good because I'm about to pass out. But I feel like that's easier said than done, especially on specific lakes. Like you look at like Lake Erie. I mean, you need electronics for Lake Erie if you're going to be efficient. I mean, you can catch fish, but like, I mean, just the idea of trying to blind cast on Lake Erie without any sort of topographical map just makes me want to
barf.
Yeah. I mean, you could run shallow, but like depending the time of year, I mean, you might catch a lake trout or something, but that's about it.
Yeah, I actually had this like conversation with somebody, I think like 4 or 5 years ago, how they used to do it back in the day
Mm.
before we had like topographic and contour mapping of lake bottoms. Basically, what he told me was they would take their black and white X96 Lowrance graphs and drive around. And whenever they saw a change in the bottom composition, so if like they saw a little hump on a slick, calm day, they would just sit there and figure out how to line it up by looking at the shoreline and just drift over it and drift over it until they caught fish. And I'm like, how did you line up? They're like, well, on these Lowrances, you could hit a waypoint on it, but there'd be no mapping. So you can still drift and line up with the spot, but you wouldn't know why it was there. You just knew how deep it was and what the bottom looked like based on your black and white graph. And I'm like, I could never fish that way based on the way I know how to fish now. Like, that would be
Nope, can't
so
do it.
rudimentary to me. I would lose my mind. Like,
Yeah, we are definitely spoiled. That is for dang sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Andy, anything else before we sign off here tonight?
Oh,
I feel like
yeah.
that was a good
Just
podcast.
Oh, I agree. One thing I will say is next year, 2023 spring. I've already started to book days. I have, I think, 9 days left in June that I can fill. May is wide open. So if you want to get on one of the best smallmouth fisheries in the nation, number 8 out of the top 100, reach out to me. We'll get out on the water for a couple days. I also do a lot of Finger Lake stuff and inland largemouth fishing and smallmouth earlier on in the season. So let's get your trip booked here coming up sooner than later, because I have a feeling my spring is going to be relatively busy.
Heck yeah. All his Andy's contact info and everything, social media, emails down below in the description. I'll definitely highly encourage you to do that. And then I'll take you out for beer and wings after. Why not?
Hey, that sounds like fun. Can
Why
I,
not?
as long as I can join?
I mean, obviously, someone's got to drive them.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Heck yeah. Well, coming up, I got a video coming out for Be the Fish tomorrow with Greg Blanchard. If you guys are in the kayak space, you guys know who Greg Blanchard is. It was fun to get out with him. Caught a freaking giant with him. But it was a tough day of fishing. But that'll be a new video on Be the Fish tomorrow. If you guys haven't checked that out, please do. Check out Andy's YouTube channel. And as always, please leave us a rating and review. It helps us big time here at Serious Angler, especially if you guys are listening on MP3. Means the world. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Share this channel with your friends. If you're on Facebook, please share this. We're really trying to grow Serious Angler. And again, if you guys are trying to get some apparel, let us know if that's something you'd be interested in, whether hat, hoodie, whichever. We're trying to, we got some really fun stuff. We just want to make sure we're doing it right. So you guys will be the first to know once that's official. But as always, Andy, you got anything else?
For now, we will see everyone Thursday, and be on the lookout for Friday. Sorry. Be on the lookout for the next episode of the Lure Lab.
Coming up on Saturday.
Yes.
All right, folks. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you on Friday.